This is Michael Popok with a Legal AF hot take on the Arizona indictment. It's time to rip the mask, or at least the black tape, off of all of those people under it who are the co-conspirators who have now been indicted, along with 14 or so fake electors in Arizona for committing election fraud and trying to overturn the will of the people. Now, Arizona is not the only attorney general that's out with a possible indictment. We're still expecting similar indictments to come out of Michigan and at least Nevada, who are also looking at, as part of the battleground states, the bad conduct, the fraudulent conduct of those around Donald Trump. Donald Trump, for right now, is one of several unindicted co-conspirators in Arizona. We know he's been indicted in 4 other places, but he's presently an unindicted co-conspirator. I want you to watch, though, the importance of another unindicted co-conspirator, number 4 in the indictment. That's Ken Chesebro. We know that Ken Chesebro, the co-architect, along with John Eastman, of the fake elector strategy to try to use fake elector certificates to throw sand in the gears of our democracy and the peaceful transfer, to have Mike Pence recognize the fake elector certificates as real elector certificates when they were delivered to him, and throw it over to the states to pick the president, which would have went to Trump over Biden because the Republican state houses outnumber the Democratic ones. That was the plot. But Ken Chesebro is currently in the same lot as Donald Trump as an unindicted co-conspirator. But my analysis here is that he is cooperating to avoid being indicted again for another felony. Remember, Ken Chesebro already pled guilty to a felony in Georgia for doing the same exact thing. He skated by and is an unindicted co-conspirator in the Jack Smith special counsel prosecution against Donald Trump. And I think here he's cooperating. I mean, there's been enough reporting that he went on a whistle-stop tour and gave testimony to Michigan and to Arizona. So I'm not surprised that the indictment has him, at least for now, cooperating. I think Donald Trump's in a different category, even though he's listed as unindicted co-conspirator number 1. Let me tell you why we know, even if we didn't get the reporting from the Attorney General's office as to who each person is. All I have to do for you is bring up the actual indictment, and I will identify each of the people with the knowledge that I have. If we go to page 19, 20, and 21 of the indictment, let's start at the top. This is blacked out for now, but I'm going to tell you, of course, who it is. The first indicted defendant as a co-conspirator who attempted to declare Trump and Pence the winners of the 2020 election are as follows, and who participated in a scheme to keep Trump in office against the will of the Arizona voters, according to the indictment. The first one is an attorney who is often identified as the mayor. Who do you think that is? So we got Rudy Giuliani in the first position. He is an indicted co-conspirator now in Arizona. Also an indicted co-conspirator in Georgia, and an unindicted co-conspirator, if you're playing at home, in Jack Smith's election interference in the case in D.C. The allegations, the indictment, are that Giuliani spread false claims of election fraud in Arizona. He presided over a phony hearing in downtown Phoenix on November 30th of 2020, where he falsely claimed that Arizona's election officials have made no effort to find out if the results of the recent presidential election were accurate. That was false. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 is obviously John Eastman. Here, he's identified as an attorney who encouraged the Republican electors to vote on December 14th and spread false claims of widespread election fraud. He also pressured the legislature in Arizona and 6 other states to change the outcome of the election. He pushed then Arizona Speaker of the House Rusty Bowers to convene a special session to decertify the presidential electors, telling him to just do it and let the court sort it out, right? That should be John Eastman. The third here listed under the black tape, so to speak, is listed as an attorney and was an advisor to the Trump campaign in 2016 and 2020. That's Boris Epshteyn. I want to talk more about him in this hot take. Boris Epshteyn is then described as implementing a scheme to submit false Republican elector votes for Trump, Pence in Arizona and obstruct the certification process in Congress. Boris Epshteyn, who is still in the inner circle for Donald Trump, who is considered to be the consigliere, one of the replacements for, let's say, Michael Cohen, is a lawyer. He's the one that got Todd Blanche to represent Donald Trump in the criminal cases, including in New York right now. But right now, Todd Blanche, we got reporting as soon as this indictment came out, Boris Epshteyn got fired by Todd Blanche, who will no longer represent him, and has told Boris Epshteyn, you need your own lawyer. But we already have information from the Jan 6 committee and in Georgia that Boris Epshteyn was at the center of the fraudulent elector scheme from the campaign standpoint. He coordinated Mike Roman, who was the election day coordinator, who's also now an indicted co-conspirator here and in Georgia, to do his bidding. And here he's listed right here. That's obviously Boris Epshteyn. The next two are females. The first one, an attorney for the Trump campaign that worked closely with blank, and I assume that's Rudy Giuliani. She made false claims of widespread election fraud in Arizona and 6 other states. I would identify that as Jenna Ellis. I would identify the next female attorney as Christina Bibb. Jenna Ellis, as we know, pled guilty to a misdemeanor in Georgia and almost lost her bar license. We know Rudy Giuliani indicted in Georgia. Here we have Christina Bibb being identified as someone who worked closely with Rudy Giuliani, who lobbied Arizona's legislators after the 2020 election to disregard the popular vote, and she organized the false electors' votes on December the 14th of 2020. The next one is Mike Roman. He's identified as the director of election day operations for the Trump campaign, and that he worked closely with, they list him as unindicted co-conspirator number 4, but that's Ken Chesbro. And we know from emails and text messages how closely those two work together to coordinate the fake elector certificates and get them delivered into the halls of Congress, into the hands of Mike Pence. Mike Roman, you'll also remember, I'm going to tell you here straight, he's also the one that brought the motion to try to get Fani Willis, his tormentor and prosecutor in Georgia, where he's also indicted, thrown off the case for some sort of illicit affair that she was having with somebody in her office. We know that failed, and now she's moving forward with the prosecution. Same Mike Roman. And then lastly, we have Mark Meadows, identified as unindicted co-conspirator number 1's chief of staff. What a fall from grace. That's how you get identified. Trump's chief of staff in 2020, that he worked with members of the Trump campaign to coordinate and implement the false elector votes in Arizona and 6 other states, and he was involved in many efforts to keep unindicted co-conspirator number 1, Trump, in power. Now, Mark Meadows is also indicted, of course, in Georgia. He wasn't even listed as an unindicted co-conspirator in Jack Smith's prosecution. We're always confused. Why isn't Jack Smith at least mentioning him as an unindicted co-conspirator? I think it's because they were concerned about Mark Meadows' status and jumping through some Department of Justice hoops. Fani Willis indicted him. Arizona has now indicted him. I expect him to be indicted in Michigan and Nevada as well. And so that's the scorecard. We've got Rudy Giuliani indicted in Georgia, indicted now in Arizona, an unindicted co-conspirator in Jack Smith's prosecution. We've got Eastman indicted in Arizona, indicted in Georgia, listed as an unindicted co-conspirator in the D.C. election case for the special counsel. Boris Epshteyn, first time he's been indicted. I've been shocked that Boris Epshteyn hasn't been indicted before now, but he can no longer make that claim to fame. Boris Epshteyn, indicted in Arizona. He's an unindicted co-conspirator in Jack Smith's election interference case. He's not indicted in Georgia, but I think the special purpose grand jury recommended that he be indicted. So that's Boris Epshteyn. Jenna Ellis, indicted in Georgia, pled guilty to a misdemeanor. She's now indicted again in Arizona for a felony. Mike Roman, indicted in Georgia, indicted in Arizona. I believe he's listed as an unindicted co-conspirator for Jack Smith. Mark Meadows, indicted in Georgia, not listed in Jack Smith's indictment, indicted here in Arizona. Christina Bibb, not indicted anywhere. She's so not indicted that she actually had time between her Newsmax stints as a newscaster to go and screw up Mar-a-Lago along with Donald Trump, where she participated in the obstruction of turning over the national defense information and top secret documents. She's the one that signed the folder, which falsely alleged that they had done a diligent search and they could only find 38 top secret documents at Mar-a-Lago when the FBI knew from other cooperating witnesses that was false. That Christina Bibb. So, she was out so long, she committed and participated potentially in other crimes. But now she's been indicted in Arizona. And again, I expect the same in Michigan and in Nevada. Look, some people are upset, and I want to explain it why, as of right now, Donald Trump is not an indicted co-conspirator in Arizona. First of all, I think there's a 6 or 7 year statute of limitations, meaning Chris Mays, the Attorney General, hats off, friend of the podcast, she's not done. She could always get a superseding or amended indictment and bring in Donald Trump. I think what she's hoping is that the unindicted co-conspirators, including Ken Chesebro, and maybe some of the indicted co-conspirators at the top, I don't know, attention Mark Meadows, attention John Eastman. I mean, Rudy Giuliani is going to go down with the ship. He's going to go down as cult follower number 1. So he's not going to cooperate. Boris Epshteyn, too. He's taken the red or blue pill or whatever it is. He's a true believer. Jenna Ellis, though, could, having seen her tearful apology that she gave in Georgia, she's on everybody's last raw nerve, including her own. She could definitely cooperate. Chesebro is already cooperating. Mike Roman, no, he's a true believer. He's the one that tried to take down Phony Willis. He's never going to cooperate. But Mark Meadows would like to put this behind him. I mean, he's been trying hard to get out of Georgia. He just got by not being indicted by the special counsel, and now he's got to deal with this one. So you see how these things are going down. In Wisconsin, they went a different route. The Attorney General, they started with a lawsuit. There was like a civil settlement, and people agreed to never commit fraud again in Arizona election history, which was a good thing. But here, these attorney generals, they made it clear. Now, some people might be also wondering, so that's why, to wrap up my point, that's why Donald Trump is not yet indicted, but could be when the rest of these people start cooperating against him. Plus, I think Chris Mays made a prosecutorial discretionary call. She's like, he's already indicted in 4 places. I'm watching how the motion practice and appeals are going on immunity and on motions to dismiss and all these other things. Why give him another opportunity to argue that his cases should be delayed? Donald Trump is on criminal trial right now and will be for the next 5 weeks in New York. We may get one more trial under our belt, maybe. And then Georgia, the rest of these will happen. But the other good news, these are state prosecutions. Even if Donald Trump somehow, which is becoming increasingly a impossibility, gets reelected or gets elected again, I should say, that doesn't stop these prosecutions. He might be able to delay them a short amount of time, but he'll die defending these cases. I mean that literally. I mean, these cases will go on long. They'll be like 3-4 years after he gets out of office if he ever to return. And the reason that it's taken so long, some people might be saying, this was 4 years ago. Why are we just talking about attorney generals now? Don't blame them. They were asked to step down, and they did step down and waited for the federal government to do its thing. First, they waited for the Jan 6 committee over a year to do their investigation. Then they waited for the Department of Justice to sit around for 9 months before they appointed a special prosecutor, a special counsel. So that was a 2-year loss right there. So they picked it up like 1.5 years ago. We've been reporting on it on the MeidasTouch network and on Legal AF. We told you about Chris Mays. I thought 6 months ago she was close to bringing the indictment, and we said so on Legal AF, our podcast. So don't blame them. It's not their fault. They were told to it's like doing a relay race, and you're told to stay in the starting blocks and not go get the baton, and you give everybody a 2-year head start. Okay, so now the starter pistol has fired and they're able to start running, but it's not their fault. So I think I want to make it clear on this hot take. They're doing the right thing. They could have done it 3 years ago, but the federal priorities of prosecution delayed them, as did the Jan 6 committee. But once they saw, these attorney generals saw that their particular voters and electors in their state, for which they are the chief legal officer and chief law enforcement officer, were not being protected. They had no choice but then start this investigation and give them credit. It took them a year. They did it. They went to a grand jury with all the evidence that they had. This is the tip of the iceberg. We'll hear more about it. As soon as all of these people are then revealed, then we'll see the arraignment of all these people. Next step in the criminal prosecution process. They'll have to, of course, all scramble to get lawyers. There'll be the invariable motions to dismiss. But they're in Arizona. They'll have to go up to the Arizona Supreme Court, which is sort of a little bit right-wing leaning. But follow it all. You follow us, we'll follow it. On the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF, podcast at the intersection of law and politics. We do Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to find out why we call it Legal AF, join us. You'll find out. We curate the top 5 stories of law and politics, and we bring it to you with lawyers who know what they're talking about at that intersection. How refreshing. So if you like this kind of analysis, join me on Wednesdays with Karen Friedman, Nick Nifolo, Saturdays with Ben Meiselas, and then we do hot takes like this one, I don't know, about every hour on the MeidasTouch Network. If you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment. It really does help. Shoot out to my playlist on MeidasTouch YouTube. You'll find all my body of work under Michael Popok or under contributors. And then you can follow me on @MSPopok on all social media. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.